incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations. Nathaniel Reeves had always prided himself on his ability to construct things that lasted. It was why he'd become one of Boston's most sought-after custom home builders. When clients wanted enduring quality with meticulous attention to detail, they called Nate Reeves. His business, Cornerstone Construction, had grown from a one-man operation to a thriving company with 30 employees over 15 years of sweat and sacrifice. "Dad, you promised you'd make it to my recital tonight." Brooks' voice crackled through his truck's speakers as Nate navigated through Boston's notorious morning traffic. "Princess, I wouldn't miss it. I'm just checking in on the Wilson project this morning, then heading to the office for some paperwork. I'll be front row at 7 sharp." Nate glanced at his watch, 6:30 a.m. Plenty of time to handle the day's obligations before his daughter's performance. "You better be. Last time you were late, and Mom said it's because your business means more to you than family." The bitterness in his 19-year-old daughter's voice cut deeper than she probably realized. "That's not fair, and you know it," Nate replied, keeping his voice even. "Everything I've built has been for you and your mother." "Whatever. Just be there." The call ended abruptly. Nate sighed as he pulled into the Wilson Project site, a sprawling colonial revival that would be his company's crown jewel when completed. As he stepped from his truck, his foreman Levi approached with a steaming cup of coffee. "Morning, boss. You look like you could use this." Levi handed him the cup, steam rising against the crisp autumn air. "Thanks. Rough morning with Brooke." Nate took a grateful sip. "Teenagers, man. My 2 boys are the same. One minute they're your little buddies. Next they're treating you like you're the enemy." Levi shook his head. "How's Vanessa doing? Haven't seen her at the site barbecues lately." A flash of something, concern, suspicion, Nate wasn't sure, crossed his mind at the mention of his wife. "Busy with her interior design clients. Business is booming, according to her." That wasn't entirely true. Vanessa's interior design business had been struggling for months. She'd been distant, irritable, spending more time on her phone and staying out late for client meetings that somehow never seemed to result in new projects. Nate had attributed it to the natural ebbs and flows of business, supporting her with extra funds when needed. After all, that's what marriage was about, supporting each other through challenges. As Nate inspected the Wilson project, his phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Need to use joint account for business emergency. Transferring $15K. We'll explain later." Before he could respond, she'd already moved the money. It was the 3rd emergency this month. Something didn't add up, but confrontation had never been Nate's style. He believed in patiently solving problems, just as he solved issues on his construction projects. That evening, Nate left work early to ensure he'd make Brooke's piano recital. He stopped at a Flowers for Roses, pink for Brooke, red for Vanessa, and arrived at the community theater 30 minutes before showtime. The parking lot was already crowded, but there was no sign of his wife's sleek black Audi. Inside, he claimed 3 front-row seats and texted Vanessa, "Got great seats. Where are you?" No response. 10 minutes before the recital, his phone finally rang. "Nate, I'm stuck with a client." Vanessa's voice sounded oddly breathless. "Their lake house project is a disaster, and I'm trying to salvage it. You'll have to record Brooke's performance for me. She's playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, Vanessa. She's been practicing for months. Can't your client wait an hour?" "Don't you start with me about priorities." Vanessa's voice turned harsh. "Some of us don't have the luxury of stable, predictable income. I'm fighting to keep clients here." Nate bit back a retort about the $15,000 she'd transferred that morning. "Fine, I'll record it. But Brooke will be devastated. She'll understand. Business is business." Vanessa hung up. While waiting for the recital to begin, Nate noticed Maxwell Porter sitting several rows back. Porter was the developer behind Boston's newest luxury high-rise, rumored to be worth billions. Nate had bid on the construction contract, but lost to a larger firm with more high-rise experience. Still, they maintained cordial relations, seeing each other at industry events. Porter noticed Nate and approached with a smooth smile that never quite reached his eyes. Reeves. Didn't expect to see Boston's premier home builder at a piano recital. My daughter's performing tonight, Nate replied, standing to shake Porter's hand. Is she now? What a coincidence. Porter's smile widened. I'm here supporting my niece. Small world. Something about Porter's demeanor set off warning bells in Nate's mind. But before he could pursue the conversation, the lights dimmed. Brooke's performance was flawless, technically perfect, but Nate noticed it lacked the emotional depth she usually brought to her playing. When she took her bow, her eyes scanned the audience, her face falling slightly when she realized her mother's seat remained empty. Afterward, as Nate waited with flowers, Brooke approached with frustration evident in her rigid posture. Let me guess, another emergency with Mom's business? Her fingers formed air quotes around emergency. She's working hard, princess, just like you did with this performance. You were incredible tonight. Brooke's expression softened slightly as she accepted the flowers. Thanks, Dad. Then her phone buzzed, and everything about her changed. Her posture, her expression, even her voice as she answered. Hey, yeah, the recital's over. Dad's here. No, she couldn't make it. I know, right? Okay, see you in a bit. Who was that? Nate asked as they walked toward the parking lot. Just friends. We're celebrating at Mia's house. Brooke quickened her pace. Can you drop me off? I'll get a ride home later. That night, Nate sat alone in his home office, reviewing blueprints but unable to focus. On a whim, he checked the joint account activity. Beyond the $15,000 transfer, he found something curious. A charge to the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in Boston from 3 days earlier. Why would Vanessa need a Boston hotel room when they lived 20 minutes away? The foundation of trust Nate had built his marriage upon was beginning to show its first significant cracks. Hairline fractures that would soon threaten the entire structure. Chapter 2. Cracks in the structure. The first snow of winter fell gently outside the windows of Cornerstone Construction's downtown office as Nate reviewed final plans for the Wilson project. His mind, however, kept drifting to the hotel charge he discovered 3 weeks earlier. Vanessa had brushed it off as a meeting room rental for clients, and he'd wanted to believe her. Boss, you've been staring at the same blueprint for 30 minutes, said Diana Rivera, Nate's project manager and right hand for the past decade. Either you found a critical flaw, or something else is eating at you. Nate rubbed his eyes. Just tired, D. Been pushing too hard lately. Bullshit. Diana perched on the edge of his desk. I've seen you work 70-hour weeks during the Fallon Estate project without breaking a sweat. This is something else. Before Nate could respond, his phone lit up with a text from his neighbor, Sam Torres. Weird question, but is Vanessa having work done on her car? Some guy in an Aston Martin just pulled into your driveway. Nate's stomach tightened. I need to go. Nate, Diana called after him, but he was already grabbing his coat and keys. 20 minutes later, Nate parked a block from his colonial-style home in Brookline and approached on foot, heart hammering against his ribs. There was a gunmetal gray Aston Martin in his driveway, gleaming even in the dull winter light. He recognized the car instantly. Maxwell Porter had driven it to an industry gala 3 months earlier, boasting about its custom features. Instead of storming in, Nate walked to Sam's house next door. Sam, a former Army medic turned emergency room nurse, answered on the first knock. Thought you might show up, Sam said, ushering him inside. Coffee. Got anything stronger? Sam poured 2 fingers of bourbon into a rocks glass. That car's been showing up for about 2 weeks now. Always when you're at work. Nate took a long swallow, welcoming the burn. Porter. Maxwell Porter. The developer? Man, I'm sorry. Sam's face reflected genuine concern. What's your play here? I need to be smart about this. Could use your help. Sam nodded slowly. What do you need? By the following week, Nate had a clearer picture of the situation. Sam's strategic observations confirmed that Porter visited 3 afternoons a week, always leaving before Brooke would return from college classes. More disturbingly, Nate discovered that the business emergencies had drained nearly $200,000 from their joint accounts over 6 months. Money that, he suspected, was financing a very different kind of partnership. At home, Nate maintained a facade of normalcy while gathering evidence. He installed a small home security system, explaining to Vanessa it was due to recent break-ins reported in the neighborhood. The cameras, with their cloud storage accessible only to him, told the story he dreaded confirming. More troubling was Brooks' apparent awareness of the situation. One evening, reviewing footage, Nate watched as Brooke arrived home early from classes to find Porter's car in the driveway. Rather than appearing shocked, she simply texted someone, waited in her car until Porter left, then entered the house as if nothing were amiss. The betrayal cut deeper than Nate had imagined possible. That Friday, opportunity presented itself unexpectedly. Vanessa announced over breakfast, "Brooke and I are thinking of a girls' weekend in New York. Shopping, shows, the works." "Sounds great," Nate replied, surprised at how easy it was to maintain his poker face. "When are you thinking?" "We leave tomorrow morning, back Monday night." Vanessa barely looked up from her phone as she spoke. "I've got that charity gala tomorrow night," Nate reminded her. "The one raising funds for veterans housing." "Oh." Vanessa looked momentarily conflicted. "I completely forgot. Could you skip it? You know how rare it is for Brooke to have a free weekend." "It's important, Vanessa. I'm being recognized for Cornerstone's contributions." "Fine." Vanessa's tone was clipped. "We'll push to Sunday morning then. One night in New York is better than none." Later that day, reviewing the security camera footage remotely from his office, Nate watched Vanessa on the phone in their bedroom, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. He enabled the audio capture he'd rarely used. "Has to be this weekend. It's all arranged." "No, he has some stupid work things Saturday night. Sunday morning. I know it's not ideal, but it's all we've got." "Yes, she knows. Of course Paris is still happening for Christmas. He has no idea. I know what I'm doing, Max." "Yes, I promise it's worth the wait." That evening, Nate developed a low-grade fever, his body perhaps manifesting the stress his mind was working overtime to contain. By Saturday morning, his temperature had climbed to 101 degrees Fahrenheit. "You look terrible," Vanessa observed coldly as she packed an overnight bag. "Maybe you should skip that gala." "I'll be fine," Nate croaked, though he felt anything but. "Just need some rest today." Brooke poked her head into their bedroom. "Mom, we need to leave in 20 if we're going to make our reservation." "Reservation?" Nate asked. "I thought you were leaving tomorrow morning." "Change of plans," Vanessa said briskly. "Found a hotel deal too good to pass up. We'll do dinner and a show tonight, shopping tomorrow." By early afternoon, Nate's condition had deteriorated dramatically. His fever spiked to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and the room spun violently when he tried to stand. He fumbled for his phone, calling Vanessa repeatedly. Straight to voicemail. Finally, he called Brooke. "What, Dad?" She answered, music and laughter in the background. "Brooke, I need help," he managed. "Fever's really bad. Need to get a hospital." A pause. Then, "Did you call Mom?" "Can't reach her. Please, can you come home?" He heard muffled conversation. Then Brooke's voice returned, surprisingly cold. "We're already in New York, Dad. Take an Uber or something." "Brooke, please." "I can barely stand." More muffled voices. Then Vanessa came on the line. "Nate, you're a grown man. Figure it out yourself. We're not cutting our trip short because you caught a cold. Please, take me to the hospital." He whispered, the room spinning around him. Vanessa's laugh was like ice water. "We're leaving for Paris next week. This is just our pre-trip. Figure it out yourself." He heard Brooke in the background, her voice clear and cruel. "Don't ruin our trip. Bye-bye." The call ended, and darkness crept into the edges of Nate's vision. With his last conscious effort, he called Sam. Hours or minutes later, Nate couldn't tell. He heard pounding on the front door, then Sam's voice calling his name. Then nothing but darkness. Chapter 3. Structural Failure. Nate floated in and out of consciousness, vaguely aware of urgent voices and the cool touch of medical equipment. Fragments of conversation reached him through the fog of fever. "Severe pneumonia. Should have been treated days ago. Lucky you found him when you did." Tried calling his wife and daughter. No response. When Nate finally opened his eyes fully, the hospital room came into focus. Sam sat in a chair beside the bed, scrolling through his phone with a troubled expression. "Welcome back," Sam said, noticing Nate's consciousness. "You've been out for nearly 2 days." Nate's throat felt like sandpaper. Vanessa? Brooke? Sam's expression hardened, still not answering. But he hesitated, then turned his phone toward Nate. You might want to see this. The screen showed an Instagram post from Brooke's account. The photo featured Vanessa, Brooke, and Maxwell Porter standing before the Eiffel Tower, champagne glasses raised in a toast. The caption read, "Surprise Paris getaway with Mom and Max. Best Christmas ever." The timestamp showed it had been posted 6 hours earlier. Nate stared at the image, the betrayal burning worse than the fever that had nearly killed him. They weren't in New York. They'd left him to die while jetting off to Paris with Porter. "I'm sorry, man." Sam put a hand on Nate's shoulder. "If it helps, the doctors say you're going to be fine. Rough case of pneumonia, but they've got you on the right antibiotics now." Nate couldn't tear his eyes from the photo, from the radiant smile on Vanessa's face as she leaned against Porter, from the adoring way Brooke looked up at the man who was not her father. "How long have you known?" Nate finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "About Paris? Just found out when I saw the post." "No, about them. How long have they been planning this?" Sam shifted uncomfortably. "For what the nurses told me, your credit card was used for 3 first-class tickets to Paris about a month ago." A month? While Nate worked 60-hour weeks building other people's dream homes, his wife and daughter had been planning to abandon him for another man. The next few days passed in a blur of medical tests, antibiotics, and haunting realizations. Nate's phone remained conspicuously silent from Vanessa and Brooke, though Diana from work visited daily, bringing updates on projects and increasingly concerned questions about his family's absence. It was Diana who finally voiced what Nate had been thinking. "You know this isn't just an affair, right? The money transfers, the trip." "Nate, I think she's planning to leave you for good." Nate nodded slowly, strength returning to his body, even as the knowledge hollowed him out inside. "I know. What are you going to do?" Before he could answer, his phone chimed with a text from an unknown international number. "It's Sam. Using a hospital phone. Been trying to reach you. They've posted more photos. You need to see these." Moments later, Sam sent screenshots from what appeared to be Maxwell Porter's private Instagram account, which one of the nurses had access to through a mutual friend. The images showed Vanessa and Porter viewing Parisian apartments, Brooke posing in designer boutiques with shopping bags, and most devastating, a close-up of Vanessa's hand sporting an enormous diamond ring that was definitely not the one Nate had given her 20 years earlier. The final image showed all three raising champagne glasses with the caption, "To New Beginnings. VP Luxury Living will revolutionize Boston design." VP Luxury Living. Vanessa Porter. She wasn't just leaving him for another man. She was building a new business, likely with the $200,000 she drained from their accounts. That night, lying in his hospital bed, something shifted inside Nate Reeves. The patient, trusting man who believed in working through problems was gone. In his place emerged someone colder, more calculating, a man who understood that some structures couldn't be salvaged, only demolished and rebuilt. When the doctor visited the next morning, Nate asked a simple question. "When can I be discharged?" "You're responding well to treatment, but I'd like to keep you another day or two." "You nearly died, Mr. Reeves." "I understand, but I have important business to attend to." The doctor frowned. "Your health comes first." "Trust me, doctor," Nate replied with a calm that surprised even himself. "What I'm planning is essential to my recovery." That evening, Diana returned with Nate's laptop and a determined expression. "Whatever you're planning, I want in. You don't even know what I'm planning. I know you. And I know when someone's been wronged beyond forgiveness." Diana pulled up a chair. "You built that woman's dream home, paid for a failing business, supported her through everything. And this is how she repays you? By hooking up with that snake Porter and turning your daughter against you?" "Hell no." Nate studied his friend's face, seeing nothing but loyalty and righteous anger. "This could get complicated, Dee. Good thing I thrive on complicated." She opened the laptop. "Now, where do we start?" For the first time since seeing that Instagram post, Nate smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It held no joy, no mirth. It was the smile of an architect who just envisioned a perfect demolition. "We start by understanding exactly what we're dealing with," Nate said. I need to know everything about Porter's business, his weaknesses, his plans with Vanessa. I need to know when they're returning. And I need to understand exactly how much of my life has been a lie. Over the next 3 days from his hospital bed, Nate began assembling the blueprint for his response. Diana pulled financial records, Sam monitored social media accounts, and through careful research, they discovered that Porter had been courting Vanessa for nearly a year, long before the obvious signs had appeared. They also learned that VP Luxury Living had already leased commercial space in Boston's exclusive Back Bay neighborhood, with a grand opening scheduled for February, just 6 weeks away. Most importantly, they discovered the return flight information, Paris to Boston, landing December 28th, 5 days away. The day before Nate's discharge, as he reviewed all they'd learned, Sam arrived with an odd expression. "What is it?" Nate asked. Sam hesitated, then pulled out his phone. They posted this an hour ago. The video showed Vanessa, Brooke, and Porter in what appeared to be an upscale Parisian restaurant. They were laughing, toasting, clearly celebrating something. "Turn up the volume," Nate instructed. "To finally being free," Vanessa was saying, her speech slightly slurred from wine. "No more pretending, no more boring construction talk, no more." She lowered her voice to mock Nate's deeper tone. "We have to be careful with money, Vanessa." Porter laughed, raising his glass. "To your fresh start, and to dear old Nate, who funded this wonderful vacation without even knowing it." They laughed again, and Brooke chimed in. "Do you think he's figured it out yet? That we're never coming back to that boring life." "Who cares?" Vanessa replied dismissively. "By the time we return, the divorce papers will be ready. He can keep his precious company. We're building something much bigger." The video ended, and Nate sat in perfect stillness, his face expressionless. "Nate?" Sam ventured cautiously. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," Nate said quietly, "that they have no idea what's coming." The next day, Nate was discharged. Instead of heading home, he checked into a hotel and made a single phone call to his attorney, explaining the situation and his initial requirements. Then he began to prepare for the return of his faithless family, a cold clarity guiding his every move. They thought they'd left him to die. They thought they'd come back to a broken man ready to sign divorce papers and fade quietly away. They were about to learn how catastrophically wrong they were. Chapter 4: Blueprints of Vengeance. The sun was setting over Boston Harbor as Nate stood at the window of his corner suite at the Seaport Hotel, watching boats navigate the darkening waters. 5 days of meticulous planning had transformed grief and betrayal into something colder and more precise, a blueprint for retribution executed with an architect's attention to detail. Flight BA 238 from Paris landed 20 minutes ago, Diana announced, entering the suite with Sam following behind. "They'll be clearing customs now." "And the house?" Nate asked, not turning from the window. "Everything's in place," Sam confirmed. "Security system modified as requested. All cameras functioning, but selective in what they'll record." "The financial arrangements?" Diana nodded. "Complete. Joint accounts have been strategically adjusted, just as you specified. Porter's corporate vulnerabilities have been identified. And Brooke's college situation? Tuition for next semester has been paid directly to the university," Diana replied. "Her personal account remains untouched, as you requested." Despite everything, Nate couldn't bring himself to punish his daughter financially. Bitterness and betrayal, yes. Calculated cruelty, no. That distinction mattered to him, even now. "Then we're ready." Nate finally turned from the window. "Let me walk through it one more time." For the next hour, the three of them reviewed every detail of what Nate had dubbed Project Cornerstone, a comprehensive plan to dismantle the foundations of Vanessa and Porter's new life before it could even begin. As they finished, Nate's phone chimed with a notification from the home security system. Vanessa and Brooke had arrived, entering with their own keys, clearly expecting an empty house or a still hospitalized husband. The three watched via the security app as Vanessa and Brooke entered. Alone, Porter conspicuously absent. "Welcome home," Nate whispered to the screen. Vanessa moved through the house with the confidence of someone who believed she still owned it. She headed straight for the master bedroom, while Brooke went to her room. Minutes later, Vanessa's voice could be heard calling out in confusion. "Brooke? Where are all my things?" The cameras captured Brooke emerging from her room, equally confused. "My stuff is gone too. What's happening?" They converged in the master bedroom, where Vanessa was frantically opening empty drawers and closets. Their clothing, jewelry, personal items, all gone. "Where's Dad?" Brooke asked, real fear entering her voice for the first time. "Is he still in the hospital?" "I don't know." Vanessa pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Max." At that moment, all the lights in the house simultaneously shut off, plunging them into darkness broken only by the glow of Vanessa's phone screen. Then, one by one, the televisions throughout the house powered on autonomously, each displaying the same image: Vanessa, Brooke, and Porter in Paris, champagne glasses raised in toast. "What the hell?" Vanessa's voice trembled. The image changed to the video they'd recorded in the Parisian restaurant, their dismissive laughter and cruel words about Nate filling the house. When it ended, the screens went black momentarily before displaying a simple message: "Welcome home. Enjoy your stay. It will be brief." Vanessa's phone rang in the darkness. She answered it with shaking hands. "Hello. I heard you had a lovely time in Paris." Nate's voice was unervingly calm. "Nate, thank God. We just got home and something weird is happening." "Yes, I know. I designed it that way." A pause. "What are you talking about? Where are you? Where are things?" "Your things are in storage. As for where I am, I'm exactly where you left me, rebuilding what you tried to destroy." "Nate, you're not making sense. We were in New York, and then we got an opportunity." "Stop lying, Vanessa. It's exhausting and pointless now." Nate's voice remained measured. "You left me to die while you flew to Paris with your lover, using money you stole from our accounts. You turned our daughter against me, and you were stupid enough to document it all on social media." Another pause, longer this time. When Vanessa spoke again, her tone had changed completely, hardened, defensive. "Fine, whatever. We'll talk about this with lawyers. Just turn the power back on and tell us where our stuff is." "I don't think you understand the situation," Nate replied. "This isn't a negotiation. It's a notification. You have 30 minutes to collect whatever is still in the house and leave. After that, the locks will change and the security system will register you as intruders." "You can't do that. This is my house too." "Actually, it's not. Check your email. You'll find documents showing the house was transferred solely to my name 3 days ago, something you authorized 6 months ago when you were too busy planning your affair to read what you were signing." In the video feed, Nate could see Vanessa frantically checking her email, then her face collapsing in shock. "This is insane," she whispered. "You can't just." 27 minutes left, Vanessa. "I suggest you and Brooke use them wisely." Nate ended the call and watched as chaos erupted in the house. Vanessa frantically called Porter while Brooke collapsed onto the bed in tears. Porter promised to send a car for them immediately. "Should we call the police?" Sam asked, watching the scene unfold. "She won't," Nate replied confidently, "because the moment law enforcement gets involved, the financial trail of her theft becomes evidence." Sure enough, 22 minutes later, a luxury SUV pulled up outside the house. Vanessa and Brooke emerged with whatever they could carry in their arms, climbing into the vehicle that whisked them away into the night. The moment they disappeared from view, Nate turned to Diana. "Phase 1 complete. Initiate Phase 2. Diana nodded, making a call. "They've left. Proceed with the locksmith and security upgrade." As she spoke, Nate's phone rang, Maxwell Porter's name flashing on the screen. "Right on schedule," Nate murmured before answering. "Porter, I was wondering when you'd call. What the hell do you think you're doing, Reeves?" Porter's voice was taut with controlled fury. "Doing? I'm protecting my assets from theft. Something any prudent businessman would understand." "Listen to me very carefully," Porter said, his voice lowering to a dangerous register. "You're playing a game you can't win. I have resources you can't imagine. Back off now. Give Vanessa what she's entitled to in the divorce, and we can all move on civilly." Nate laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "That's an interesting perspective from the man who was celebrating spending my money in Paris while I was fighting for my life in a hospital bed. Ancient history. And technically, it was joint money. Is that what you're planning to argue in court? When I present evidence of how you and my wife conspired to drain accounts while planning to abandon me during a life-threatening illness. When I show the videos of you three celebrating my impending death. Silence stretched between them before Porter spoke again. What do you want? What I want, Nate said softly, is for you to experience exactly what you tried to inflict on me. Complete and utter destruction. But unlike you, I won't leave it to chance. I've engineered it. You're threatening me. No, Porter, I'm promising you. Sleep well. Nate ended the call and turned to his friends. He'll move against us by morning. Is everything in place? Diana nodded. Everything. The moment he tries to access those accounts or secure that business loan for VP Luxury Living, the triggers will activate. Then we wait. Nate returned to the window, watching the harbor lights. By this time tomorrow, they'll understand exactly what they've awakened. Later that night, after Sam and Diana had left, Nate sat alone with a glass of bourbon, reviewing security footage of his empty house. He paused on a frame showing the Christmas tree he'd decorated before falling ill. Gifts he'd carefully chosen for Vanessa and Brooke still arranged beneath it. For one brief moment, grief threatened to overwhelm his resolve. Then he remembered Vanessa's laughter as she dismissed his plea for help, remembered Brooke's cold voice. Don't ruin our trip. Bye-bye. He deleted the footage and closed his laptop. In its place, he opened the file containing his most important blueprint yet. Not for a house, but for the systematic dismantling of everything Maxwell Porter had built and everything Vanessa hoped to create from its ruins. Chapter 5. Demolition begins. The first rays of morning sunlight illuminated Boston's financial district as Nate stepped into the towering glass headquarters of Meridian Bank. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, he nodded to the security guard who recognized him immediately. Mr. Reeves, haven't seen you in a while. How's that Wilson project coming along? On schedule, Frank. The family moves in next month. Nate maintained casual conversation while scanning the lobby directory. Is Leonard in yet? Mr. Hartwick? Always the first one here. 6th floor, same as always. Leonard Hartwick, Executive Vice President of Commercial Lending at Meridian, was not merely Nate's banker, but a longtime friend. Their relationship had been forged through dozens of successful construction projects financed through Meridian, with never a late payment or default. Leonard greeted Nate with genuine warmth, ushering him into a spacious office overlooking the Charles River. Nate, good to see you back on your feet. Heard you had a health scare before Christmas. Pneumonia. Nearly killed me. Nate accepted the offered seat. But I'm fully recovered and focused on new opportunities. Glad to hear it. What can I do for you today? Nate placed a thumb drive on Leonard's desk. I need to show you something. It concerns Maxwell Porter and a significant loan application he's submitted to Meridian for a venture called VP Luxury Living. Leonard's expression shifted subtly. I can neither confirm nor deny. I understand the confidentiality requirements, Nate interrupted gently. But as a major client of this bank and someone with extensive knowledge of Boston's construction and design industry, I believe I have information that would constitute material facts affecting risk assessment for that loan. Leonard stared at the thumb drive for a long moment before curiosity won out. What exactly are we looking at here? 40 minutes later, Leonard's face had lost its healthy color as he reviewed financial transactions, social media posts, and private communications that Nate had legally obtained. This is troubling, to say the least, Leonard finally said. If even half of this is accurate, every byte is verifiable, Nate assured him. Porter isn't expanding his legitimate business. He's creating a shell for my wife to operate under while systematically moving assets beyond the reach of creditors. The money they're seeking from Meridian would be similarly diverted. Leonard removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. The loan committee meets this afternoon. I'll need to present this. That's all I ask. A fair assessment of the actual risk. As Nate left Meridian Bank, his phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Phase 2 complete. Target apoplectic. Proceeding to Phase 3. Phase 3 took Nate to the offices of Garrison and Winters, one of Boston's premier law firms, where he met with Abigail Winters herself, a formidable divorce attorney with a reputation for ruthless efficiency. "Let me be perfectly clear," Abigail said after reviewing the evidence Nate presented. "You have grounds for a fault divorce based on adultery, economic misconduct, and abandonment during illness. With this documentation, we can potentially secure an emergency injunction freezing all contested assets pending resolution." "And my daughter?" Nate asked quietly. Abigail's expression softened slightly. "She's 19, Mr. Reeves. Legally an adult. The courts won't address custody or visitation. Your relationship with her is between the two of you." Nate nodded, the pain of Brooke's betrayal still raw. "Proceed with everything else as discussed. I want the filing to hit today before they can regroup." By late afternoon, the dominoes were falling precisely as Nate had designed. The Meridian loan was declined with unusual speed. The divorce filing, complete with damning evidence, was processed and served to both Vanessa and Porter. And most devastating of all, an anonymous tip to the Boston Globe's business section had resulted in a reporter calling Porter for comment on allegations of financial impropriety and personal misconduct. From his hotel suite, Nate watched the chaos unfold through digital breadcrumbs. Urgent emails, panicked phone calls, a flurry of activity as Porter scrambled to contain the damage. At precisely 6 p.m., Nate's phone rang, Brooke's name on the display. He answered on the third ring. "Hello, Brooke. Dad." Her voice was small, frightened. "What are you doing?" "I'm protecting what's mine. Something I should have done much sooner." "You're ruining everything." Anger crept into her tone. "Max says you're trying to destroy his reputation with lies." "Is that what he says?" Nate kept his voice level. "Ask him about the money your mother transferred from our accounts. Ask him about the plans they made while I was fighting for my life. Ask him why they needed a business ready to launch mere weeks after my anticipated death." "What are you talking about?" "You weren't dying. You had a fever. I had pneumonia that progressed to sepsis because I was left untreated. The doctors told me directly that another few hours without intervention would have been fatal." Nate paused. "But you and your mother were too busy shopping in Paris to care." Silence stretched between them. When Brooke finally spoke, her voice wavered. "I didn't know. Mom said you were being dramatic. And that was easier to believe, wasn't it? That I was being dramatic rather than critically ill. That I was controlling rather than prudent with money. That I was boring rather than reliable." Nate sighed. "I understand, Brooke. It's easier to justify betrayal when you vilify the betrayed." "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now you make a choice. You can continue following your mother and Porter down this path, or you can step back and really look at what's happening. Your tuition is paid through graduation. Your personal account is untouched. That was my choice, to protect your future regardless of your decision." After a long pause, Brooke asked, "Can I come see you? To talk?" "Not yet," Nate replied honestly. "I'm not ready for that. But maybe someday." After ending the call, Nate turned to find Sam watching him with concern. "You okay?" Sam asked. "No," Nate admitted, "but I will be." Later that evening, as Nate reviewed updates from Diana about Porter's increasingly desperate attempts to salvage his reputation and business relationships, his phone rang again. "Vanessa, you've destroyed everything," she spat without preamble. "Are you happy now?" "Destroyed everything?" Nate repeated calmly. "You mean like leaving your husband to die of pneumonia while you gallivanted around Paris with your lover? That kind of destruction. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. You weren't supposed to get that sick. So you admit it was deliberate. You left knowing I needed medical attention." A pause. "That's not. I didn't mean." "Save it for the deposition, Vanessa. You'll need your strength to explain the financial transactions. Max says you can't prove anything." "Max is wrong. I have the receipts, the transfers, the videos, the social media posts. I have evidence of every move you made. This isn't just about the money, is it?" Vanessa's voice dropped. "This is revenge." "No, Vanessa. This is consequences. You tried to eliminate me from your life without a second thought. Now I'm simply returning the favor, with interest. We can work something out," she offered, desperation creeping in her voice. "We could split things fairly. You keep the company. I'll take a reasonable settlement. Like the settlement you and Porter were planning for me." The one where I'd be too sick or dead to fight back. Nate laughed coldly. That opportunity expired when you left me to die. The next morning brought news that exceeded even Nate's carefully calibrated expectations. Porter's largest development project had lost its primary investor overnight. The Boston Globe had published a devastating profile examining Porter's business practices, complete with quotes from former partners alleging ethical lapses. And most satisfyingly, the lease for VP Luxury Living's Back Bay showroom had been terminated due to material misrepresentation in the application. You've crippled them in less than 48 hours, Diana observed, reviewing the updates. Porter stock is down 18% since opening. It's not enough, Nate replied. They need to feel what I felt, complete abandonment when they're at their most vulnerable. What's next? Nate smiled thinly. We wait for them to make a desperate move. People like Porter and Vanessa always do when cornered. He didn't have to wait long. That evening, security cameras captured Porter himself approaching Nate's house, clearly intoxicated, attempting unsuccessfully to enter using an old key Vanessa had given him. When that failed, he began pounding on the door, shouting threats and obscenities. Nate watched the feed with cold satisfaction as police arrived 14 minutes later, responding to automated security alerts. Porter's belligerent response to the officers resulted in his arrest for public intoxication and attempted breaking and entering. By midnight, Porter was released on bail, but the damage was done. Photos of his arrest had already leaked to social media, completing the public humiliation Nate had orchestrated. Is it enough yet? Sam asked as they watched Porter's disheveled departure from the police station. Not quite, Nate replied. There's one piece missing. The final structural element that will ensure total collapse. The next morning, that element arrived in the form of an unexpected ally. Leonard Hartwick called from Meridian Bank with surprising news. Porter tried to access emergency capital using his primary residence as collateral, Leonard reported. Standard procedure flagged the application due to his recent arrest. During review, our compliance team discovered something interesting. The house isn't solely in his name. It's jointly owned with an offshore LLC registered in the Cayman Islands. An LLC that I'm guessing belongs to someone with existing financial problems, Nate surmised. Bingo. The same LLC that's been receiving periodic transfers from Porter for over a year. Our systems flagged it as potential money laundering. Nate smiled. And how does Meridian plan to proceed with this information? Regulatory compliance requires us to file certain reports with appropriate authorities. Banking regulations, you understand. Of course. Thank you for keeping me informed as a valued client. The final piece was now in motion. A financial investigation that would unravel the careful web Porter had been weaving, exposing not just his affair with Vanessa, but potentially years of questionable financial maneuvers. As Nate ended the call, he felt the tight knot of betrayal in his chest finally begin to loosen. The architects of his intended destruction were now watching their own carefully constructed plans collapse around them. A perfect symmetry of justice. Chapter 6. Countermeasures. They're getting desperate, Diana announced, entering Nate's hotel suite with a tablet displaying multiple news alerts. Porter's company issued a formal statement claiming he's the victim of a coordinated smear campaign and threatening legal action against unnamed parties. Nate took the tablet, scanning the press release with mild amusement. Standard crisis management playbook. Deny everything, claim victimhood, threaten counteraction. There's more, Diana continued. Vanessa's been calling every contact in your client list, telling them you've had a mental breakdown and are making wild accusations because of your illness. This detail pierced Nate's composure. My clients? She's going after my business now. Only a few have called the office for clarification. Most know better than to believe gossip. Nate paced the room, mind racing. He'd anticipated many potential countermoves, but attacking Cornerstone Construction directly hadn't been high on his list. Vanessa knew how much the company meant to him, not just financially, but as his life's work. We need to get ahead of this, he decided. Call an emergency meeting with our top 10 clients. Personal visits, not phone calls. I need to show them I'm perfectly sound. Already on it, Diana assured him. Scheduled for tomorrow morning at the Langham Hotel. 7 have confirmed so far. Nate nodded his approval. Diana's foresight was why he'd made her his second-in-command years ago. As they strategized, Nate's phone buzzed with a text from Sam. Heads up, Brooke just arrived at your house. Alone. Nate activated the security feed to see his daughter standing hesitantly on the front porch, glancing nervously over her shoulder. I should talk to her, he murmured, more to himself than Diana. Are you sure that's wise? Diana asked cautiously. She could be gathering intelligence for Porter and Vanessa. Nate watched his daughter's uncertain posture, the way she clutched her coat around herself in the January cold. Maybe, but she's still my daughter. He called the house system, activating the external intercom. Brooke, she startled, looking for the source of his voice. Dad? Where are you? Not there, obviously. What do you want? Brooke hugged herself tighter. To talk. Please. I'm alone, I promise. Nate hesitated, then made a decision. Go to Cambridge Brewing Company in Kennel Square. Find a table in the back. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Thank you, she whispered, relief evident in her voice. After she left, Diana fixed Nate with a concerned look. This could be a trap. I know. That's why you're coming with me. Watch from the bar. If Porter or Vanessa shows up, text me immediately. 40 minutes later, Nate slid into a booth across from his daughter in the busy brew pub. Brooke looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confident, entitled young woman from the Paris videos replaced by someone fragile and uncertain. You came, she said, relief evident in her voice. I said I would. Nate studied her, noting the dark circles under her eyes, the chapped lips, the bitten nails. You look terrible. Everything's falling apart. Tears welled in her eyes. Max and Mom fight constantly. The business is dead before it started. The apartment they leased for us is being rented to someone else. And Max's wife is back from Europe. Nate froze. His wife. Brooke nodded miserably. Alexandra. They've been separated for months, but with all the publicity, she's come back and is threatening to take everything in a divorce unless he breaks things off with Mom. He told you he was divorced. It wasn't a question. He told Mom they were legally separated and the divorce was almost final. I never really asked for details. Brooke wiped at her eyes. Mom just found out yesterday. She's completely devastated. A complex mixture of emotions washed over Nate. Vindication, certainly, but also an unexpected twinge of, not quite sympathy, but perhaps recognition of Vanessa's pain. Why are you telling me this? He asked finally. Because I need help, Brooke admitted. I have nowhere to go. Mom's staying with her sister in Providence, who doesn't have room for me. My roommate situation at college is complicated because of the semester break. She broke down completely. I just want to come home. Nate sat motionless, torn between the instinctual desire to comfort his daughter and the memory of her cruel dismissal when he'd begged for help. Don't ruin our trip. Bye-bye, he quoted softly. That's what you said when I was dying, Brooke. She flinched as if struck. I didn't know how sick you were. Mom said you were exaggerating. And you believe that? After 20 years of me never crying wolf? After knowing I wouldn't miss your recital unless something was desperately wrong. I wanted to believe her, Brooke whispered. It was easier than facing what we were doing to you. They sat in silence, the ambient noise of the brew pub creating a strange sense of privacy in the public space. I'm not ready to forgive you, Nate finally said. Not yet, but I won't leave you homeless either. Diana will take you to the house and get you set up in the guest room. Your old room is not available at the moment. Relief flooded Brooke's face. Thank you. Dad, this isn't reconciliation, Nate interrupted firmly. It's basic human decency, something you and your mother forgot about when you left me to die. Don't mistake it for forgiveness. The next morning, after a night spent in his hotel, rather than returning home to face Brooke, Nate met with his top clients at the Langham. Any concerns about his mental state were quickly dispelled as he walked them through current projects, upcoming bids, and Cornerstone's strong financial position. Frankly, gentlemen, he concluded, the rumors about my stability are being spread by individuals with clear motives to damage my reputation. My personal challenges have not and will not affect Cornerstone's ability to deliver exceptional results. The meeting was a resounding success, with several clients even offering additional projects as votes of confidence. As the group dispersed, Leonard Hartwick from Meridian Bank lingered. "Impressive damage control," Leonard observed. "But I should warn you, Porter isn't surrendering. He's taken meetings with 3 other banks since we declined his loan." "Let him try," Nate replied confidently. "The due diligence triggers we've established will follow him anywhere in Boston. Not just Boston. He's reached out to New York and Chicago institutions as well." This gave Nate pause. His network didn't extend that far with the same strength. "Thank you for the heads up," he said, making a mental note to expand his strategy. When Nate returned to his hotel, he found Diana waiting with a troubled expression. "We have a problem," she announced without preamble. "Porter's filed a lawsuit against you personally and Cornerstone Construction, alleging defamation, tortious interference with business relationships, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We expected legal countermeasures," Nate reminded her. "Abigail is prepared. It's not just a lawsuit. He's somehow convinced a judge to issue a temporary restraining order preventing you from discussing him or his business with financial institutions pending a hearing." This was a genuine setback, one that threatened to halt Nate's dismantling of Porter's empire before it was complete. "When's the hearing?" he asked. 3 weeks from now." Nate considered the implications. That gives Porter 3 weeks to secure alternative financing and potentially salvage his position. "We need to accelerate our timeline." Later that afternoon, as Nate reviewed options with Abigail Winters, his phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Nathaniel Reeves." "Mr. Reeves." "Alexandra Porter." Nate straightened in his chair. "Mrs. Porter, this is unexpected." "I imagine it is. I understand you've been having some conflicts with my husband." "That's one way to put it. I'd like to meet. There are matters we should discuss that would be mutually beneficial." Nate hesitated only briefly. "Where and when?" 2 hours later, Nate sat across from Alexandra Porter in a private dining room at Mistral, one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants. In her late 40s, Alexandra radiated the polished confidence that comes from generations of wealth combined with sharp intelligence. "I'll be direct, Mr. Reeves," she began after pleasantries were exchanged. "Maxwell has made a mess of things with his business, with your wife, and most relevantly, with our marriage. I was under the impression you were separated, nearing divorce." Alexandra's laugh was brittle. "Is that what he told Vanessa? How convenient. We had a trial separation last spring while I was in Europe handling my family's business interests. There was never any divorce filing. And now I've returned to discover my husband has not only been unfaithful, but has entangled himself with a married woman, leveraged our joint assets for a dubious new venture, and managed to attract regulatory scrutiny in the process." Alexandra sipped her wine. "It's quite impressive, really, how thoroughly he's self-destructed in just a few months. What exactly do you want from me, Mrs. Porter?" "An alliance." She set down her glass precisely. "You want to punish Maxwell and your wife for their betrayal. I want to protect my assets and family name from his foolishness. Our interests align perfectly. What are you proposing?" "Information, Mr. Reeves. Maxwell was careless. He used our home office, our shared cloud storage, our joint email for years. I have access to communications and financial records that would be enlightening for your divorce proceedings and quite problematic for his current legal actions against you." Nate studied her carefully. "And in return, you direct your considerable resources toward ensuring Maxwell is thoroughly discredited in business circles, while I handle the social dimensions of his downfall. Additionally, you agree not to pursue claims against assets that are legitimately mine through my family, regardless of their current joint status. Why not just divorce him and be done with it?" Alexander smiled thinly. "Divorce is messy, public, and leaves too much to judicial discretion. I prefer a more controlled dissolution. Besides, the prenuptial agreement has a fidelity clause that works significantly in my favor if I can prove infidelity." The proposition was tempting. Alexandra clearly had access to information that would strengthen Nate's position substantially. Yet something felt off about the too-perfect alignment of interests. "I need time to consider," he said finally. "Of course. But not too much time, Mr. Reeves." The temporary restraining order gives Maxwell a narrow window to regroup. We both benefit from acting quickly. After Alexandra left, Nate called Sam and Diana to his hotel suite, explaining the unexpected offer and his reservations. "It's too convenient," Sam agreed. "The sudden appearance of an ally with exactly what you need? Classic trap." Diana was more measured. Maybe not. Alexandra Porter has a reputation for ruthlessness in protecting family interests. If Maxwell has genuinely threatened those interests, her intervention makes sense. "There's another possibility," Nate said slowly. "What if Maxwell sent her? What if this is an elaborate ploy to get me to violate the restraining order or admit to actions that could strengthen his lawsuit?" "Only one way to find out," Diana suggested. "Ask for a sample of this supposed evidence before committing to anything." The next morning, Nate's email contained a single message from Alexandra. No text, just an attachment. The document was a scanned letter from Porter to his attorney, dated 6 months earlier, outlining a strategy to position certain assets beyond reach before pursuing personal and professional changes that may trigger adverse financial consequences. The letter explicitly mentioned Vanessa Reeves as a factor in these planned changes. It was exactly the smoking gun Nate needed. Proof of premeditated financial misconduct directly tied to the affair. But was it genuine or an elaborate forgery designed to entrap him? As Nate pondered this question, his phone buzzed with an alert from the house security system. Vanessa was at the front door, engaged in a heated argument with Brooke, who refused to let her in. "I'm your mother. You can't keep me out of my own house," Vanessa shouted, her voice crystal clear through the system. "It's not your house anymore," Brooke replied, her voice shaking but determined. "And I'm not letting you in just so you can take more things that don't belong to you. Everything in there belongs to me as much as to your father. Now open this door before I call the police." "Go ahead. Call them. I'm sure they'd be very interested in hearing about how you left Dad to die while you vacationed in Paris with your married boyfriend." Vanessa's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little. You were right there with me. Don't pretend you're innocent now." "I know what I did," Brooke admitted, her voice breaking. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. But you're still trying to justify it. You haven't even asked how close Dad came to dying." Watching this confrontation remotely, Nate felt a complex emotion he couldn't immediately identify. It wasn't quite vindication or satisfaction. It was something closer to peace. A recognition that regardless of what happened with Porter's lawsuit or Alexandra's offer or any other complication, something fundamental had already been restored. His daughter's recognition of right and wrong. With sudden clarity, Nate knew exactly how to proceed with Alexandra Porter's offer and the final phase of his response to those who had betrayed him. It wouldn't be the scorched earth approach he'd initially planned, but something more precise. A surgical strike that would excise the cancer while preserving what could still be salvaged. He picked up his phone and called Alexandra. "I've made my decision." Chapter 7. Structural Integrity. The Boston legal community rarely saw courtroom drama to match the scene unfolding in Suffolk County Superior Court. After weeks of preliminary maneuvering, Maxwell Porter's lawsuit against Nathaniel Reeves had reached its first substantive hearing. The court's consideration of whether to extend the temporary restraining order that had hampered Nate's counterattack. Porter sat at the plaintiff's table, immaculately dressed but visibly strained, flanked by 2 attorneys from a prestigious firm. Across the aisle, Nate presented a study in controlled composure, with Abigail Winters beside him and a single leather portfolio on the table before them. Judge Eleanor Harmon, known for her no-nonsense approach and razor-sharp intellect, called the hearing to order. "Before we proceed, I want to clarify the scope of today's proceeding," Judge Harmon began, peering over her reading glasses. "We are here to determine whether the temporary restraining order should be extended pending full trial. This is not that trial. Keep your arguments focused accordingly." Porter's lead attorney, Martin Shaw, rose first. "Your Honor, the extension is clearly warranted." Mr. Reeves is engaged in a systematic campaign to destroy my client's reputation and business relationships through innuendo, misrepresentation, and the selective sharing of private information obtained through dubious means. Can you provide specific examples, counselor? Judge Harmon asked. Certainly. Mr. Reeves approached multiple financial institutions with whom Mr. Porter had business relationships, sharing misleading information that resulted in loan denials and the withdrawal of investment commitments. He has contacted Mr. Porter's business associates, clients, and partners with similar defamatory claims, causing irreparable harm to relationships cultivated over decades. Shaw continued for several minutes, painting Nate as a vengeful, unstable individual using his business connections to wage personal warfare. When he finished, Judge Harmon turned to Abigail Winters. Ms. Winters, your response? Abigail rose unhurriedly. Your Honor, the temporary restraining order should be dissolved immediately, not extended. It was granted based on misrepresentations and half-truths from Mr. Porter, who is attempting to use this court to shield himself from the natural consequences of his own actions. She opened the leather portfolio and withdrew a single document. I submit to the court a letter written by Mr. Porter to his attorney 6 months ago, outlining his intention to hide assets in preparation for pursuing a relationship with Mrs. Reeves while my client was still unaware of their affair. This letter alone establishes that Mr. Porter was not an innocent victim, but an active participant in a scheme that involved both emotional and financial betrayal. Porter whispered urgently to his attorney, his face paling. Furthermore, Abigail continued, every piece of information Mr. Reeves shared with financial institutions was factually accurate and directly relevant to legitimate business considerations. Mr. Reeves did not seek to punish Mr. Porter, but merely to protect his own interests and ensure that Boston's financial community was aware of relevant facts when considering business proposals from Mr. Porter and his associates. She proceeded to dismantle each of Porter's claims, concluding with a devastating summary. Your Honor, this restraining order was not sought to prevent actual harm, but to provide Mr. Porter a shield behind which he could continue pursuing business ventures built on deception. Deception of his wife, of my client, of financial institutions, and now of this court. Judge Harmon studied both attorneys, then addressed Porter directly. Mr. Porter, are you prepared to testify under oath that the letter Ms. Winters referenced is fraudulent? Porter conferred with his attorneys, visible tension in their hushed exchange. Finally, Shaw rose again. Your Honor, we would need time to authenticate the document properly. I see. Judge Harmon's tone suggested she saw quite clearly indeed. In that case, I'm dissolving the temporary restraining order, effective immediately. Mr. Porter has not met the burden required for its extension. She turned to Nate. However, Mr. Reeves, this ruling should not be interpreted as carte blanche to engage in a vendetta. Any actions you take that cross the line into actual defamation or tortious interference will be viewed most unfavorably by this court. Am I understood? Perfectly, Your Honor, Nate replied. As they exited the courtroom, Porter caught up to Nate in the hallway. This isn't over, Reeves. Not by a long shot. Nate regarded him calmly. Actually, it is over, Porter. The letter is genuine, as you well know. Alexandra provided it, along with numerous other documents that make your position untenable. Porter's composure cracked entirely. Alexandra? My wife gave you that letter? That's impossible. It's protected by attorney-client privilege. Not when it was stored on a shared home server that she owns outright through a family trust. Perhaps you should have been more careful with your conspiracies. Nate stepped closer, lowering his voice. Here's what happens next. You're going to withdraw your lawsuit completely and with prejudice. You're going to cease all business entanglements with Vanessa. And you're going to issue a public statement acknowledging your relationship with her was inappropriate. Or what? Porter challenged, though the bravado had drained from his voice. Or Alexandra releases everything else she found, including your communications about certain development projects with environmental compliance issues that would interest state regulators immensely. Porter stared at him, the blood draining from his face. You've been working with my wife this entire time. No, only since she approached me 3 weeks ago. Unlike you and Vanessa, I don't plan betrayals months in advance. Later that evening, as Nate reviewed the day's developments with his team in his hotel suite, Diana received a news alert on her phone. "Porter's caving," she announced, reading from the screen. His company just issued a statement. Maxwell Porter has withdrawn his lawsuit against Nathaniel Reeves and Cornerstone Construction, acknowledging that recent business disputes stem from personal matters that should not have affected professional relationships. And the other part? Nate asked. Diana continued reading. Mr. Porter also wishes to clarify that his personal relationship with Vanessa Reeves was inappropriate and has been terminated. He deeply regrets any pain or confusion this relationship may have caused. Sam whistled softly. He threw her under the bus completely. As we expected, Nate replied. Porter's primary loyalty has always been to himself. When forced to choose between salvaging his reputation and protecting Vanessa, there was never any real question. So what happens to her now? Diana asked. Nate gazed out the window at the city lights. That depends on her next move. He didn't have to wait long to find out. The following morning, Nate received a call from Abigail Winters. Vanessa's attorney reached out. Abigail reported. They're seeking an emergency meeting to discuss divorce terms. Reading between the lines, she's desperate for a quick resolution. Schedule it for tomorrow, Nate instructed. But make it clear I'll only attend if Vanessa comes prepared to be completely honest. No more manipulation, no more lies. The meeting took place in Abigail's office, neutral ground that nevertheless placed Vanessa at a psychological disadvantage. When Nate entered the conference room, he barely recognized his wife of 20 years. Gone was the confident, polished woman who had dismissed his pleas for help. In her place sat someone diminished, her designer clothes exchanged for simple business attire, her perfect makeup replaced by a pale, drawn expression. Nate, she began immediately, her voice unsteady. He raised a hand to stop her. No tearful apologies, Vanessa. Not yet. First, complete honesty about everything. How long the affair lasted, how much money you took, what you and Porter were really planning. For a moment, rebellion flashed in her eyes, the instinctive resistance to being cornered. Then, like a deflating balloon, she seemed to collapse inward. 14 months, she admitted quietly. The affair started 14 months ago, after that charity gala, where you couldn't attend because of the Wilson Project deadline. Nate absorbed this information. Nearly a third of their last years together had been a lie. The money went to 3 places, Vanessa continued, not meeting his eyes. Some for the business startup costs, some for personal expenses, and some to a private account Porter suggested I establish in preparation for leaving you. And the plan for Christmas? For Paris. Vanessa closed her eyes briefly. It was supposed to be a clean break. You were working so much, and I told Porter you probably wouldn't even notice we were gone until after the holidays. The fever was unexpected. Unexpected. Nate repeated the word, its inadequacy hanging in the air. And when I called begging for help, I told you I needed to go to the hospital. I convinced myself you were exaggerating. Her voice had shrunk to nearly a whisper. It was easier than facing what I was doing. And then in Paris, it was easier to just not check on you. The stark admission hung in the air between them. What do you want now, Vanessa? Nate finally asked. To be done. She looked up, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Porter's dumped me, professionally and personally. His wife is making sure I'm persona non grata in Boston's social circles. My business is ruined before it started. I just want to finalize the divorce and move somewhere I can start over. Nate considered her carefully. The vengeful part of him, the part still raw from betrayal, wanted to crush her completely, to leave her with nothing but the clothes on her back. But something else had emerged during these weeks of calculated response, a recognition that total destruction wasn't necessary for justice. Here's what I'm prepared to offer, he said finally. A one-time settlement of $500,000. No alimony. No ongoing financial entanglements. You keep your personal property and vehicle. In exchange, you relinquish all claims to the house, to Cornerstone, and to any future earnings or assets. Vanessa's attorney leaned in to whisper urgently in her ear, clearly advising her that she could potentially get more through contentious litigation. Accepting this offer means signing comprehensive non-disparagement agreements, Nate continued. It means never speaking publicly about our marriage or its end. It means leaving Boston and not returning. And if I fight? Vanessa asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Then I will use every resource at my disposal to ensure you receive the absolute minimum required by law, which, given your documented financial misconduct and abandonment during life-threatening illness, would likely be far less than I'm offering. The litigation would be public, protracted, and exhausting. The room fell silent as Vanessa weighed her options. I accept your terms, she finally said, but I have one condition of my own, which is, Brooke, I know she's staying with you now. I want to be able to maintain a relationship with her, even if I'm not in Boston. It was the one request Nate hadn't anticipated. Despite everything, Vanessa was still Brooke's mother. Severing that relationship completely would only hurt his daughter further. That's between you and Brooke, he replied after careful consideration. I won't interfere with her choice to have you in her life or not, but I won't facilitate it either. Vanessa nodded, understanding the boundaries he was establishing. Thank you. The paperwork was finalized within days, with both parties motivated to conclude matters quickly. When Nate returned to the house, truly his house now, he found Brooke waiting in the kitchen, a tentative expression on her face. It's done, she asked. It's done, he confirmed. Your mother will be leaving Boston next week. Brooke nodded slowly. She called me, asked if I would see her before she goes. That's your decision. What would you do? If you were me? Nate considered the question carefully. I would remember that people can be more than their worst mistakes. I would remember that forgiveness and forgetting are different things. And I would decide based on what would bring me peace, not what anyone else thinks I should do. Brooke's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Dad. For everything. For believing the worst about you. For going along with their plans. For not helping when you needed me. I know. Nate hesitated, then finally opened his arms. Brooke fell into his embrace, sobbing against his chest like the little girl she had once been. They stood like that for a long while, the first tentative steps of rebuilding their relationship. It wouldn't be easy or quick, but Nate recognized now that some structures, unlike Porter's business empire or Vanessa's elaborate deceptions, were worth the effort to salvage and strengthen. Later that night, as Nate sat in his home office reviewing project proposals, life and business continuing despite personal upheaval, his phone rang. Alexandra Porter's name appeared on the screen. Mrs. Porter, he answered. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. Mr. Reeves, I understand congratulations are in order. Maxwell has withdrawn his lawsuit, and your divorce settlement is proceeding amicably. Thanks to your assistance, in large part, a mutually beneficial arrangement, as promised. Alexander's voice was coolly satisfied. Maxwell has agreed to similarly generous terms in our separation, though we've decided against formal divorce for now. Financial considerations, you understand. Of course, Nate understood perfectly. Alexandra had secured control without the public spectacle of divorce proceedings. I trust our agreement regarding certain shared assets has been honored. To the letter, your forensic accountants will find that all diverted funds have been returned to their proper accounts, with interest. A gesture of good faith. After concluding the call, Nate stepped onto his back deck, breathing deeply of the cold night air. The revenge he had planned had evolved into something more nuanced than simple destruction. A recalibration of justice that punished the guilty while preserving what deserved preservation. Porter's reputation was damaged, but not destroyed. Vanessa had lost her social standing and relationship, but gained a chance to rebuild elsewhere. And Brooke had learned hard truths about actions and consequences while still having the opportunity to repair relationships with both parents. As for Nate himself, the coldness that had driven his initial plans had thawed, replaced by something more sustainable, a clear-eyed determination to rebuild his life on more solid foundations. The ruthless revenge he had promised himself in that hospital bed had been executed, rather than indiscriminate devastation. In the end, that made the victory more complete, more satisfying than the scorched earth approach he had first envisioned. Justice, Nate reflected, watching his breath fog in the winter air, didn't require annihilation. Sometimes it simply required everyone to face the truth of what they had done and what they had almost destroyed. Chapter 8: Renovations. Spring arrived in Boston with an explosion of cherry blossoms and renewal that mirrored the transformation in Nate's life. For months had passed since the courthouse confrontation with Porter, and the landscape of Nate's existence had shifted dramatically. The Wilson family wants to add a pool house, Diana announced, dropping plans on Nate's desk at Cornerstone's offices. They're thrilled with the main house and want to continue working exclusively with us. Timeline, Nate asked, examining the preliminary sketches. They're flexible, but hoping for completion by next summer. Nate nodded, making notes. Let's schedule a site visit next week. I have some ideas for integrating it with the existing landscape design. As Diana turned to leave, she paused. Almost forgot. Sam called. He's confirmed for dinner tonight. Perfect. Brooke's making her grandmother's lasagna. 7 o'clock. The ease of their exchange reflected how seamlessly Diana and Sam had become fixtures in Nate's reconstructed life. Diana now a full partner in Cornerstone Construction, Sam a trusted friend whose medical intervention had quite literally saved Nate's life. After Diana left, Nate leaned back in his chair, reflecting on how different things were from his lowest moment in that hospital bed, seeing the pair's photos while fighting for his life. The pain hadn't disappeared completely. Betrayal of that magnitude left scars that would never fully heal, but had transformed into something manageable, even occasionally instructive. Cornerstone Construction was thriving, with more projects than they could accept and a reputation for integrity that had only strengthened through the public aspects of Nate's personal ordeal. The industry had largely sided with him, particularly after Porter's admission of wrongdoing. His new home, a thoughtfully renovated townhouse in Beacon Hill, represented his fresh start. A place without memories of Vanessa, chosen and designed entirely to his own preferences. He'd sold the Brookline house, unable to comfortably inhabit spaces so marked by betrayal, despite Brooke's initial reluctance to let go of her childhood home. Brooke herself had undergone perhaps the most profound transformation. Having withdrawn from her spring semester to process everything that had happened, she had spent months in therapy, working through her role in the events and her complicated feelings toward both parents. Now, she was preparing to return to school with a changed perspective and a new major, psychology instead of business, inspired by her own therapeutic journey. Most surprisingly, she had maintained limited contact with Vanessa, who had relocated to Seattle and opened a small interior design consultancy. Their relationship was strained but not severed, a testament to Brooke's capacity for conditional forgiveness and her recognition that people could change. That evening, as Nate helped Brooke prepare dinner, she broached a subject they hadn't discussed in months. I heard from Mom yesterday, she said, carefully monitoring his reaction as she layered pasta in the baking dish. Oh, Nate kept his tone neutral, continuing to chop basil for the salad. She's seeing someone, a structural engineer she met through work. She wanted me to know before I visit next month. Nate absorbed this information, surprised by his lack of emotional response. Are you okay with that? Brooke considered the question seriously. I think so. She seems healthier now, more grounded. The therapist says it's good that she's moving forward without hiding things. Your therapist is probably right. What about you, Dad? Brooke ventured cautiously. Have you thought about, dating again? The question caught Nate off guard. He'd been so focused on rebuilding the essential structures of his life that romantic possibilities hadn't entered his considerations. Not really, he admitted. Been a bit preoccupied with other renovations. Brooke rolled her eyes at his construction metaphor, but smiled. Diana thinks you should. She says half the single women in Boston's architecture world would jump at the chance. Diana said that, did she? Nate raised an eyebrow. Seems she's discussing my personal life quite freely these days. Only because she cares. Brooke hesitated, then added, Sam thinks so too. That you should consider dating, I see. So my daughter, business partner, and neighbor have formed a committee to manage my romantic prospects. More like a support team. Brooke grinned, sliding the lasagna into the oven. Face it, Dad. You need help in that department. Nate laughed, genuinely amused by her assessment. Maybe so, but all in good time. When Sam arrived for dinner, bringing an expensive bottle of wine and his trademark straightforward perspective, the conversation flowed easily, from Cornerstone's projects to Brooke's upcoming return to school, to Sam's recent promotion at the hospital. Speaking of the hospital, Sam said as they finished dessert, remember Leo Winters? The emergency room doctor who treated you during your pneumonia? Vaguely, Nate replied, though he recalled more clearly than he admitted. An intelligent woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner who had possibly saved his life. She asked about you the other day. Remembered you as the pneumonia patient with the terrible wife. Her words, not mine. Brooke perked up immediately. Dr. Winters asked about Dad? Interesting. Down, Cupid, Nate warned his daughter. It was probably just professional interest. Actually, Sam continued, ignoring Nate's warning glance. She specifically asked if you'd recovered fully and whether you were back in the world yet. Again, her words. See? Brooke nudged her father. Support team. Later, after Sam had left and Brooke had retreated to her room, Nate sat on the balcony of his new home, considering the unexpected direction the evening's conversation had taken. The idea of dating again felt simultaneously terrifying and intriguing, a renovation of his life he hadn't yet blueprinted. His phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Wilson Pool House designs attached. Also, completely unrelated, Dr. Leo Winters will be at the Children's Hospital Benefit Gala next month. You're attending as Cornerstone's representative. Purely coincidental scheduling, I assure you. Nate laughed softly at his friend's transparent matchmaking, but found himself genuinely smiling at the possibility. Perhaps it was time to consider expanding the reconstruction of his life beyond professional success and family healing. The following week brought an unexpected encounter when Nate literally bumped into Maxwell Porter at a city planning commission meeting. Both men were there regarding different projects. Nate for a new sustainable housing development Cornerstone was proposing, Porter for what appeared to be a significantly scaled-down version of his previous commercial ambitions. Reeves, Porter acknowledged stiffly, the first time they'd faced each other since the courthouse confrontation. Porter, Nate replied evenly. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them, laden with history. Your housing proposal, Porter finally said, gesturing to the plans under Nate's arm. The commission will approve it. It's good work. The grudging compliment surprised Nate. Thank you. Good luck with your project as well. Porter nodded curtly, then hesitated as if wanting to say more. Finally, he added, Alexandra speaks highly of how you handled everything. Said you showed restraint where others wouldn't have. She's a remarkable woman, Nate observed. Much more than you deserved. Instead of the angry retort Nate half expected, Porter simply nodded again. On that, at least we agree. They parted without further exchange, but the brief interaction left Nate thoughtful. Porter had been humbled, but not destroyed. Exactly the calibrated outcome Nate had ultimately designed. The man's life had been fundamentally altered, but not ended. His consequences proportional to his actions. That evening, Nate received an unexpected email from Vanessa, only the third direct communication since the divorce had been finalized. The message was brief, but striking in its directness. Nate, I've been working with my therapist on making amends where possible. I know words are inadequate for what I did to you, but I need to say them anyway. I am profoundly sorry for betraying you, for abandoning you when you needed me most, and for trying to turn Brooke against you. There's no justification for my actions. I was selfish, cruel, and cowardly. The person I became during those months with Maxwell isn't someone I ever want to be again. I don't expect or deserve forgiveness. I just want you to know that I recognize the full extent of the harm I caused and am committed to never inflicting such pain on anyone again. Brooke tells me you're doing well. I'm genuinely glad. You deserved better than what I gave you, in every way. Vanessa. Nate read the message several times, trying to gauge his own emotional response. There was no anger, no searing pain, just a muted acknowledgement of a chapter closed, a construction project completed and left behind. He saved the email, but didn't reply. Some communications required no response. Their value lay simply in having been expressed. 2 days later, as Nate supervised work at the Wilson property, Sam called with unexpected news. "You need to come to the hospital," Sam said without preamble. "It's Brooke." Nate's heart seized. "What happened? Is she hurt?" No, she's fine physically. But she's here with Alexandra Porter. There's been an accident." 30 minutes later, Nate strode through the emergency department to find Brooke and Alexandra in a private waiting area, both women ashen-faced. "What happened?" he asked, looking between them. "Maxwell had a stroke," Alexandra explained, her usual composure cracked with genuine concern. Brooke was meeting him for coffee, to get closure before returning to school, when it happened. She called 911 and rode in the ambulance with him. Nate turned to his daughter, who looked simultaneously shaken and determined. "You were meeting Porter? Why didn't you tell me?" "I needed to do it on my own," Brooke explained. "To tell him exactly what his actions had done to our family, how they affected me. It was part of my therapy, confronting the people who hurt me." "And then he just collapsed?" Brooke nodded. Mid-sentence, his face went slack on one side, and he started slurring his words. Then he fell. Her voice quavered. "I thought he was dying, Dad. And even after everything he did, I couldn't just leave him there." Pride swelled in Nate's chest alongside concern for his daughter. "You did the right thing, Brooke." Alexandra touched Brooke's shoulder gently. "The doctors say your quick action likely saved his life. The golden hour for stroke treatment is crucial." The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Brooke had potentially saved the life of the man who had been willing to let her father die. The symmetry held a poetic justice that no revenge plan could have orchestrated. "How bad is it?" Nate asked Alexandra. "Too early to know the full extent. There will be some speech impairment, possibly cognitive effects. Rehabilitation will be extensive." Nate nodded, processing this development. "What can we do?" Alexandra seemed surprised by the offer. "Just being here for Brooke is enough. I know there's no love lost between you and Maxwell." "That doesn't mean I'd wish this on him," Nate said simply. "Or on you." Over the following weeks, as Porter began a difficult recovery journey, an unexpected alliance formed. Brooke, working through her own healing process, volunteered regularly at the rehabilitation center where Porter was receiving treatment. Alexandra, managing both Porter's care and the remains of his business interests, found an unlikely advisor in Nate, whose experience in rebuilding after devastation proved valuable in unexpected ways. What had begun as ruthless revenge had evolved into something more complex, a web of human connections that acknowledged past wrongs without being defined by them, that allowed for growth and change without erasing accountability. By early summer, as Cornerstone broke ground on its most ambitious project yet, an innovative mixed-income housing development that would showcase Nate's commitment to community-focused architecture. The landscape of his life had been completely transformed. The foundations were stronger now, built with the wisdom of someone who had experienced collapse and understood the importance of integrity in every support beam. The structure was more open, incorporating new elements that would have seemed impossible in his previous life, including, most surprisingly, a cautious first date with Dr. Leo Winters that had led to a second, and now a third. As Nate stood at the groundbreaking ceremony, Brooke beside him, Diana, and Sam nearby, he felt something he hadn't expected to feel again. Not just contentment or professional satisfaction, but genuine hope for the future he was building. The fever that had nearly killed him had burned away what was weak and false in his life. The cold calculation of his initial revenge plans had given way to something more sustainable. And the rebuilding process, though painful and challenging, had resulted in something better than what had been lost. That evening, as he and Brooke walked along the harbor, she asked a question that caught him by surprise. "Are you happy, Dad? After everything that happened?" Nate considered the question carefully. Happy isn't quite the right word. I'm purposeful, engaged, present in my own life in ways I wasn't before. "That sounds like happiness to me," Brooke observed. "Just a more grounded version." Maybe you're right. Nate smiled at his daughter. This young woman who had betrayed him, then found the courage to rebuild their relationship with painstaking honesty. What about you? Are you ready for next semester? I think so. Brooke linked her arm through his as they walked. I'm nervous, but good nervous. I feel like I have perspective now that I didn't have before. Perspective earned the hard way. The only way that sticks, according to my therapist. She glanced up at him. By the way, Mom mentioned she might visit Boston in the fall for a design conference. She wanted to know if that would be okay with you. A year ago, the idea would have been unthinkable. Now, Nate found himself nodding slowly. Life's too short for permanent embargoes. As long as she understands the boundaries. She does. Brooke squeezed his arm. We all do now. They continued their walk in comfortable silence, the summer evening wrapping around them, the renovated structures of their lives standing firm against whatever storms might still come. Chapter 9. The Final Blueprint. 1 year later, on a crisp autumn evening, Cornerstone Construction's headquarters buzzed with activity as staff and guests gathered for the company's 20th anniversary celebration. The converted warehouse space showcased the firm's design philosophy. Original structural elements preserved and enhanced, modern additions integrated thoughtfully, the old and new creating something stronger together than either could be alone. Nate stood near the entrance, greeting arrivals alongside Diana, both of them enjoying the sight of their expanded team mingling with clients, partners, and friends who had supported the company's remarkable growth over the past year. Mr. Harrison from City Planning just arrived, Diana murmured. The zoning variance for the Riverfront project is still pending with his department. I'll handle it, Nate assured her. Why don't you check on the presentation setup? We should start in about 20 minutes. As Diana moved away, Nate scanned the room, noting Sam chatting with colleagues from the hospital, Brooke showing her university friends around the project displays, and Leah discussing something intently with one of Cornerstone's engineers. The sight of his daughter and girlfriend engaged in his professional world filled Nate with a quiet satisfaction. Quite the triumph, said a voice beside him. Alexandra Porter. Alexandra. Nate turned to greet her warmly. I wasn't sure you'd make it. And miss celebrating the man who helped salvage my family's financial future? Hardly. She accepted a champagne flute from a passing waiter. Besides, Maxwell insisted I come and extend his congratulations. How was he doing? Nate asked, genuine concern in his voice. Better than expected. The speech therapy is working wonders. He's walking with minimal assistance now, and the cognitive effects were less severe than initially feared. Alexandra's expression softened slightly. Having Brooke visit him regularly has been unexpectedly therapeutic for his recovery. Nate nodded, still somewhat amazed by his daughter's capacity for forgiveness. Her regular visits to Porter during his rehabilitation had started as part of her own healing journey, but had evolved into something mutually beneficial. Porter, humbled by his physical limitations and confronted with the consequences of his actions, had found in Brooke a reason to fight for recovery, a living reminder of the human cost of his previous behavior. And the new company structure is working out, Nate inquired. Remarkably well. Maxwell provides strategic insight from home, while I handle operations and client relationships. The scaled-back focus on smaller, ethical developments has actually improved our reputation. We'll never be what we were before, but perhaps that's for the best. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a face Nate hadn't expected to see. Vanessa, looking elegant but subdued in a simple black dress, hesitating at the entrance. I should circulate, Alexandra said diplomatically, spotting the new arrival. We'll catch up later. Nate approached his ex-wife, noting how different she appeared from the status-obsessed woman who had left him for dead. There was a groundedness to her now, an absence of the brittle artifice that had characterized her final years with him. Vanessa, I wasn't expecting you. Brooke invited me. Vanessa's voice held uncharacteristic uncertainty. I told her I'd only come if you were comfortable with it. I can leave if. It's fine, Nate assured her, surprised to find he meant it. It's a celebration of Cornerstone's 20 years. You were part of that history, for better or worse. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. I promise not to stay long. I just wanted to see what Brooke's been talking about, how much the company has grown. She'll be happy you're here. She's over by the model of the riverfront development. As Vanessa moved toward their daughter, Nate felt a gentle hand on his arm. Leah, watching the interaction with curious concern. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "Better than I expected to be," he admitted, covering her hand with his own. "It's strange, but seeing her doesn't hurt anymore. It's like looking at a chapter of my life that's completely closed." Leah smiled, understanding in her eyes. "That's a good place to be." "The best possible place," he agreed, squeezing her hand. The formal presentation began 30 minutes later, with Nate addressing the gathered crowd about Cornerstone's journey, from a one-man operation to the innovative firm it had become, with special emphasis on the challenges and growth of the past year. "Many of you know that last year brought personal challenges that threatened everything I had built," Nate said, his voice steady as he addressed the difficult subject directly. "There was a point where I found myself in a hospital bed, fighting for my life in more ways than one." The room grew quiet, many aware of the broad strokes, if not the intimate details of his ordeal. What I discovered through that experience was that some structures cannot be saved when their foundations are compromised. But I also learned that demolition isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of something new, something potentially stronger and more authentic than what came before. He gestured to the architectural models surrounding them. "That philosophy has informed every Cornerstone project this year. We've focused on creating homes and buildings that aren't just beautiful or functional, but resilient, structures designed to weather storms and adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining their essential integrity." As Nate continued outlining Cornerstone's vision and upcoming projects, he caught Brooke's eye in the crowd. She stood between Vanessa and Sam, a physical manifestation of the bridge she had become between the broken pieces of their family. Not repairing what had been destroyed, but creating new connections that acknowledged both the pain of the past and the possibility of a different future. When the formal presentation concluded and the evening shifted to more relaxed celebration, Nate found himself in a quiet corner with Brooke, both of them watching the successful gathering with satisfaction. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Brooke asked, gesturing around them. "A year ago, I mean, not in my wildest dreams," Nate admitted, "or my darkest nightmares. When I saw Mom and Leah actually having a civil conversation earlier, I almost fell over." Nate chuckled. "Leah's pretty remarkable that way. She sees people clearly, but without judgment. Like when she first met you, feverish, angry, plotting elaborate revenge." Brooke teased. "Exactly. Though I prefer to think she saw the potential for healing beneath all that." Brooke grew serious suddenly. "Do you ever regret not going through with your original plan? The complete destruction version?" Nate considered the question carefully. "No, it would have damaged me as much as them in the end. The ruthlessness I felt in that hospital bed was necessary in the moment. It gave me the strength to fight back when I was at my weakest. But actually executing that level of vengeance would have hollowed me out, made me someone I wouldn't recognize. Like what happened to Mom with Maxwell." Brooke observed insightfully. "She became someone else with him, someone worse." "Exactly. Revenge was necessary, but calibrated revenge was wiser. Making them face consequences proportional to their actions allowed everyone to learn and grow, rather than just suffer. Even Maxwell, even him, maybe especially him." Nate glanced across the room where Alexandra was showing something on her phone to a colleague, likely photos of Porter's recovery progress. Some lessons can only be learned through loss and limitation. His stroke forced him to confront vulnerability in ways nothing else could have. "So in the end, you got what you wanted, just not the way you planned." "I got something better than what I wanted," Nate corrected gently. "I wanted vengeance. What I got was justice, healing, and the chance to build something new." As the evening wound down, guests gradually departing with congratulations and well wishes, Nate found himself standing on the rooftop deck of the building with Leah, looking out over Boston's illuminated skyline. "Successful night," she observed, leaning comfortably against his side. "Beyond expectations," he agreed, though having Vanessa, Alexandra, and you all in the same room was a bit surreal. Life is surreal sometimes, especially when you've survived the impossible. Leah turned to face him. You know what impressed me most when I first met you in the ER? My charming delirium? She laughed. Your resilience. Even fighting sepsis, even knowing you'd been betrayed, there was something in you that refused to be destroyed. That's rare, Nate. I had help, he reminded her. Sam getting me to the hospital. You treating me. Diana keeping the company running. Without that support, you'd still have found a way through, she insisted. It's who you are. You build things that last. The truth of her observation settled over him like a mantle. Not a burden, but a purpose recognized and embraced. He had built his life back, not as an exact replica of what had been destroyed, but as something new that incorporated the lessons of collapse. When Nate finally returned home that night, to the Beacon Hill townhouse that now held traces of both his and Leah's personalities, he found himself drawn to his home office. There, in a drawer he rarely opened, lay the original blueprint of his revenge plan, detailed and merciless in its design. He unfolded it, scanning the calculated steps he had outlined in those dark days after discovering the betrayal. Some elements had been implemented as planned. Others had evolved into something more nuanced. And some had been abandoned entirely as unnecessary or excessive. The document represented a moment in time, a response to acute pain that had served its purpose in helping him survive. But it was no longer the blueprint he was following. With a sense of completion rather than regret, Nate fed the paper into his shredder, watching as the detailed revenge plan was reduced to confetti. He didn't need it anymore. The final blueprint for his life wasn't about vengeance or even justice. It was about building something worthy on the foundation of everything he had learned. That night, as he lay beside Leah in the quiet darkness, Nate reflected on the strange path that had brought him to this moment. The fever that had nearly killed him had instead burned away what was false and revealed what was essential. The betrayal that should have destroyed him had instead forced him to discover strengths he never knew he possessed. You're thinking too loudly, Leah murmured sleepily beside him. Sorry, he whispered, pulling her closer. Just processing the evening. Seeing Vanessa? That, and everything else. He traced gentle patterns on her shoulder. A year ago, I was plotting ruthless revenge from a hospital bed. Now I'm hosting an event where my ex-wife, her former lover's wife, and my new partner are all in the same room, and somehow it works. Leah propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face in the dim light. That's because your revenge evolved into something more powerful than destruction. What do you mean? You gave everyone exactly what they needed, not what they deserved. Her fingers brushed his cheek. Porter needed humility. Vanessa needed consequences and a chance to rebuild. Brooke needed truth and reconciliation. And you needed to rediscover who you really are when everything familiar is stripped away. Nate considered her words. And what did I discover? That you're someone who builds rather than destroys, even when destruction would be justified. She settled back against him. That's why I fell in love with you, Not despite what happened to you, but because of how you responded to it. As sleep finally claimed him, Nate felt a profound sense of completion. The blueprint of his life had undergone radical revisions, unexpected demolitions, and careful reconstructions. The final design wasn't what he'd originally envisioned. It was something stronger, more authentic, more resilient. The fever dreams of his illness had shown him the darkest possibilities of human betrayal. The cold reality of his revenge had taught him the limitations of vengeance. But it was in the careful, deliberate rebuilding that followed that Nate Reeves had found his greatest triumph. Not the destruction of those who had wronged him, but the creation of a life more meaningful than the one that had been taken from him. In the end, his most perfect revenge hadn't been in making his betrayers suffer, but in refusing to let their actions define the architect he had always been, a builder of things designed to weather storms and stand the test of time. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.